Okay, welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at how to graph lines using the slope and the y-intercept. Now, luckily, this is something we know how to do, and we learned it back in Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Now, we didn't call it slope and y-intercept at the time, but that's really what it was. We had this y equals our mx plus b. Our m now stands for our slope, which in the past was our growth. It was how many tiles were we adding each time. Okay, how much weight were we losing every week? Okay, how quickly or how many feet was a tree growing each year? And our b is our y-intercept. Okay, in the past we called it the starting amount. How many tiles were in figure 0? Okay, how tall was the tree when we planted it? These are ideas that we had way back in Chapter 3. So this whole concept of graphing lines using slope and y-intercept is exactly the same. We now understand what slope is, and we use that to graph our lines quickly. So let's say we have y equals 2x plus 3. Okay, this is an easy example. This plus 3 means we have 3 tiles in figure 0. So again, you're expected to press pause along the way so you can copy and get caught up so you can work through it as we go through it. So we have this graph copied down. This plus 3 means we have 3 tiles in figure 0. And this 2 is our growth. Okay, we understand that growth and slope represent a speed. Okay, so this 2 means we're adding 2 tiles every figure. Okay, so we add 2 tiles, go over to the next figure. We add 2 tiles, go over to the next figure. We kind of ran out of room up here, but we keep this pattern going in both directions, okay? So that means we go back and subtract 2, go back, down 2, back, down 2. And this is this line, okay? There's 3 tiles in figure 0. Figure 0 is right our y-axis. And this 2 means we're adding 2 tiles every figure. Okay, we're adding 2 tiles every figure, adding 2 tiles every figure, adding 2 tiles every figure. And we just draw our line through these points. Okay, and this is how we graphed our lines way back in Chapters 3 and Chapter 4. It was very easy. We identified how many tiles are in figure 0 and how quickly are we adding tiles or subtracting tiles. In this case, we're adding 2 tiles every time, so we start at 3 and we add 2 tiles, go over to the next figure. That means figure 1 is going to have 5 tiles, figure 2 would have 7 tiles, figure 3 would have 9 tiles, and so on. Okay, now let's look at when it gets a little bit more complicated. Okay, now we understand that slope is not always a nice, neat whole number. Okay, so we have a very similar looking equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 3. We still have our y equals mx plus b. We need to graph lines. We need it in this form. So we have y equals mx plus b. So our b is still 3. Okay, our starting amount is still 3. We still have 3 tiles in figure 0. Our y-intercept is always the number that's by itself, okay, without our x. Okay, now our slope is 1/2. Okay, now before you might think, okay, we're adding half a tile each figure, so we're going to go up a half over 1, up a half over 1. Okay, we want to get away from that thinking. We have a better understanding of what slope is. The slope is the rate of change of this line. Now we understand that slope is delta y over delta x. It's how many tiles are we adding, and our delta x is how often, okay, over how many tiles, or how many figures, sorry. So this slope of 1/2, okay, our slope is 1/2. This means our delta y equals 1 and our delta x equals 2. Okay, our slope is simply what we multiply by x. It hasn't changed since Chapter 3, and that will never change as well. Okay, so when we see it as a rate, when we see it as a fraction, we want to think our delta y and our delta x. This 1/2 means we're adding 1 tile every 2 figures. So let's do that. Let's add 1 tile every 2 figures. Okay, so figure 0 has 3 tiles, and then we're going over 2 figures to figure 2, and we're adding a tile to get to 4 tiles. So if there's 3 tiles in figure 0, and we're adding 1 tile every 2 figures, that means we go over 2 figures, add a tile, over 2 figures, add a tile. We keep going in both directions. And we draw our line through these points. Again, this is how we graph it. Okay, we don't worry about fractions or decimals. We just use this as a rate. We're adding 1 tile every 2 figures. So let's do that. We start with 3 tiles. We add 1 tile every 2 figures. 1 tile every 2 figures. 1 tile every 2 figures. And that's how we graph our line. Okay, so let's keep going. We can't ever do too many examples of graphing lines because it's a very important skill that you have to learn how to do very quickly and very easily. Okay, so take a moment to copy down the graph, and then let's get started. So we have y equals negative 4/3 x. Okay, so we still want to know, well, how many tiles are in figure 0? What's our starting amount? Well, since we're not adding anything, our starting amount, or our number for nothing, is 0. Okay, so we start with 0 tiles in figure 0. Now our slope is negative 4/3. Now as we get to more complicated fractions, this is really when you want to understand that slope, when it's as a fraction, is really just a rate. It's our delta y and our delta x. So in this example, we see our slope is negative 4/3. This negative 4 is our delta y. This 3 is our delta x. So this means we're losing 4 tiles. We're subtracting 4 tiles every 3 figures. We understand that slope's a rate of change. Okay, our delta y tells us how many tiles are we adding or subtracting, and our delta x is how often. So when it's given to us as a rate, we get those two numbers that we need. So we're subtracting 4 tiles. So we start at this point. We just subtract 4 tiles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we do so every 3 figures. So we go down 4 tiles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 3 figures. Okay, we subtracted 4 tiles every 3 figures. Our delta y is negative 4, so we go down 4. Our delta x is 3, so we go to the right 3. Okay, and since this whole slope is negative, that means our line has to be decreasing, which it, as we see, it will be. And then we just continue this pattern in the other direction. Okay, so left 3 up 4, left 3 up 4. And we just be careful to draw our line nice and neat through these points. As you can see, it's very easy to graph lines. Okay, we never really had to deal with fractions. Okay, we never really tried to go down 4/3 or had to do anything really with fractions, because we know at this point that this really isn't a fraction, it's a rate of change. Okay, we're losing 4 tiles every 3 figures, so that just is the pattern that this line follows. Again, we see the slope is negative, this line is negative, so that's one way to check to make sure that you're graphing your lines in the right direction. Okay, negative slopes means the line's going down from left to right. Positive slope means the line's going up from left to right. So just make sure you really take the time to double check that you're doing that correct. Okay, our next example, y equals 3/5 x minus 1. So if you want, you can press pause, try this one on your own, then press play when you're ready to check it. Okay, so we have the graph copied down. We always start with our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is this negative 1. Okay, there's negative 1 tiles in figure 0. And we always start on our y-axis, right in the middle. Now our slope is 3/5. Okay, that means our delta y is 3, and our delta x is 5. Okay, we really don't view this as a fraction. We view this as a rate. So we're adding 3 tiles every 5 figures. We add 3 tiles. We go up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we ran out of room going to the right, so let's just continue this pattern going to the left. So we're going to go down 3, left 5, down 3, left 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, we understand that we have to go, we're adding 3 tiles every 5 figures, so we're doing that throughout this entire line. We're adding 3 tiles every 5 figures. We're adding 3 tiles every 5 figures, and we just draw our line through these points. Again, this line is increasing from left to right, which is what we want because our slope is positive. Okay, so it's very easy. Our y-intercept is negative 1, and our slope is 3/5. So we go up 3, our delta y is plus 3, our delta x is plus 5. We're adding 3 tiles every 5 figures, and that's just the speed or the rate at which this line or this pattern is changing. Again, we can never have too many examples, so take a moment, try this one, and press play when you're ready to check your work. Y equals negative 1/6 x plus 5. So we have 5 tiles in figure 0. Our y-intercept is 5. Then our slope is negative 1/6. Again, we don't view this as a fraction, we view this as a rate. We're subtracting 1 tile every 6 figures. Okay, this slope is negative, that means we're subtracting tiles. We're going to subtract 1 tile, so we go down 1 and over 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We subtracted 1 tile every 6 figures. We spent $1 every 6 days. Okay, we lost 1 pound every 6 weeks. Okay, this is just the rate of change. And then just to be neat, we continue this kind of pattern in the other direction. So we see the point's going to be right here. And we're nice and neat. We're going to draw our line through these points. And that's how we graph that line. So let's keep going. Y equals 7/2 x minus 2. Okay, -2 is our y-intercept. Our slope is 7/2. So we view this as being we're adding 7 tiles every 2 days. We pedal 7 meters every 2 seconds. Okay, so we go up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we pedal 7 meters every 2 seconds. And we can keep this going. We kind of ran out of room in both directions, so we're just going to draw our line through these 2 points. Make sure we just include arrows on the end. Okay, that's it. We started our y-intercept just like we did back in chapter 3 as -2. Now we aren't afraid of fraction slopes because we know that these are just a rate. It's the speed. We're pedaling 7 meters every 2 seconds. So we go up 7 meters every 2 seconds, 7 meters every 2 seconds. And that's the speed at which this line is changing. Let's keep going. Y equals 4x. So again, here we started our y-intercept. You see that we're not adding or subtracting anything, so that means our y-intercept is simply 0. Okay, when x equals 0, y also equals 0. And now our slope is 4. Okay, so this means we add 4 tiles every figure. Okay, we're saving $4 every week. And you have to really make sure that when you see this and we start seeing that slope is really a fraction, we think of it as a rate. Okay, this slope of 4 is back to our growth. Okay, when you see just a whole number, we know we're doing this every figure, or every week, or every day. So you don't just go up 4 and put a point here. Okay, that doesn't make sense. We're adding 4 tiles every figure. That's what this slope of 4 means. Okay, just like I did in chapter 3 when we had it as a growth. The growth is 4, so we're adding 4 tiles every figure. So we add 4 tiles, 1, 2, 3, 4, over one figure. Add 4 tiles over one figure, and we keep this going in the other direction too. We draw our line through these points. Again, positive slope means our line's increasing. Okay, next one, y equals 1/4 x. So again, our y-intercept is 0, and our slope is 1/4. Okay, now we want to make sure we understand the difference between a slope being 4 and a slope being 1/4. Okay, a slope of 4 means we're adding 4 tiles every figure. A slope of 1/4 means we're adding 1 tile every 4 figures. So here we're adding 1 tile. Our delta y is 1. We're adding 1 tile every 4 figures. We're adding 1 tile every 4 figures. And this is what y equals 1/4 x. This is the graph of y equals 1/4 x. And it's very important that you understand the difference. If the slope is just a whole number, that means we're adding that many tiles every figure. So 4 means we're adding 4 tiles every figure. So we go up 4 over one figure, up 4 tiles over one figure. The slope of 1/4 means we're adding 1 tile every 4 figures. So we're adding 1 tile going over 4 figures, adding 1 tile going over 4 figures. It's very important that you understand the difference between these two graphs, because as you can see, they look very different from each other. Okay, 2 more. Y equals -3/2 x plus 4. So again, copy the graph, press pause, try it on your own, then press play when you're ready to check. So y-intercept is 4. So we start at 4 tiles in figure 0. Our slope is -3/2. That means we're losing 3 tiles every 2 figures. So we subtract 3 tiles, 1, 2, 3, go over 2 figures. And it's very important when you're always graphing, you always start by going to the right. So if you're subtracting 3 tiles every 2 figures, you want to subtract 3 tiles, so you go down 3, but you're always going to the right 2. You're subtracting 3 tiles every 2 figures. You're subtracting 3 tiles every 2 figures. You're subtracting 3 tiles every 2 figures. So this line is decreasing, which is what we want because our slope is negative. Your line has to be decreasing from left to right. And we just draw our line through these points. This is how we graph. So graphing is very easy once you understand how to use your slope and your y-intercept. And last one, y equals the opposite of x minus 3. So we have -3 tiles in figure 0, so our y-intercept is -3. It's always just a number by itself. Now here we see a negative x. At this point we aren't scared because we know that this negative x means the growth is simply -1. There's a -1 kind of hidden right before that x. It's not 0, it's -1. We're subtracting 1 tile every figure. Okay, we're losing 1 pound every day. We're spending $1 every cookie. So we subtract 1 tile every figure. We subtract 1 tile every figure. Again, once we see this as a whole number, we know that it's every figure. It's back to our growth understanding. Whenever it's a whole number, it's every figure. You have to remember to always go over 1 when it's a whole number. Subtracting 1 tile every figure, 1 tile every figure, and so on. We keep this going in both directions. We could draw a nice neat line without a ruler. And that's how we graph lines using our slope and our y-intercept. Okay, so if you're still a little confused about what to do when we have these whole numbers, again, you can just go back and watch one of the earlier videos because this is something we already learned back in Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. And if you need more examples still of graphing lines, refer to some of the other online resources or a lot of the examples in your textbook.